The sun hung low over the dense green canopy of Odugro forest, casting long swaying shadows across the compound walls of Iriti Girls' Academy. Amara Obi sat stiffly in the back seat of her father's dusty Toyota Corolla, clutching her backpack like a shield. Her stomach churned, not from fear, she told herself, but from motion sickness. The winding road up Iriti Hill had been steep and narrow, flanked by signs that read no entry after 7 p.m. and do not stray from the main road. Her father noticed her silence. "You're not afraid, are you?" he asked with a teasing smile. "It's just school." Amara didn't answer. Something about the school's towering black gate, its rusted crest shaped like a rising sun and a book, made her uneasy. She glanced at the nearby villagers who had stopped to watch their arrival. A group of women in faded wrappers stood whispering and crossing themselves as they stared up at the school. That was the first thing she noticed. Nobody in town smiled when they looked at Iriti. The school itself was beautiful on the surface. Colonial-era buildings painted cream and forest green stood among ancient cashew trees. Stone pathways led to rose gardens and manicured lawns. Girls in immaculate uniforms walked in pairs, whispering and giggling. But there was something artificial about the perfection, like a photo that had been overly edited. After a hasty goodbye, her father drove away, the sound of his engine fading into the forested silence. Amara was alone now. She was escorted to her dorm by a plump, soft-spoken senior girl named Chioma. "You're lucky you got C block," Chioma said. "It's closest to the kitchen, and the power doesn't fail here like the others. But..." She hesitated. "You should always be back before lights out. Don't let anyone invite you out late. Especially not into the forest." "The forest?" Amara asked. Chioma only smiled tightly and said, "You'll see." Her roommate, Lulu Adebayo, was everything Amara wasn't. Confident, stylish even in uniform, and surrounded by a group of older girls who treated her like a princess. Her family name, Adebayo, was powerful. Political. "You're the scholarship girl," Lulu said that evening, looking Amara over like a science project. "I hope you're smart. This place eats weak girls." "I'm not weak," Amara replied. "Good. Then maybe you'll last the term." That night, as Amara lay on the stiff mattress, lulled by the chirping crickets outside and the distant hum of a generator, she heard whispering. At first she thought it was Lulu praying. But when she opened her eyes, she saw Lulu wasn't in her bed. The whispering came from under the floorboards. The next day, during orientation, Madame Kazi made her first appearance. She was beautiful in a way that made your skin crawl. Too elegant, too poised, too perfect. Her eyes were golden brown, almost unnatural. Her long, flowing booba shimmered as she walked between rows of seated girls, her cane clicking softly against the tiled floor. "Discipline is the mother of brilliance," she said, smiling at the girls. "And here at Iriti we raise queens, not children." Amara couldn't stop staring. There was something familiar about Madame Kazi, like a face you've seen before in a dream. When their eyes met, Amara felt something tighten in her chest. The teacher gave her a slight, knowing nod. Greeting. Or a warning. Later that week, Amara heard the whispers again. But this time it came from inside the dorm room. On Friday night, just after lights out, Amara was half asleep when she heard the soft creak of a door. She opened one eye. Lulu was slipping out of bed, barefoot, dressed in a white wrapper. Her eyes were glassy. She tiptoed to the door and looked back, her face blank as a mask. A few other girls, seniors from Dorm A, waited outside, also dressed in white. They moved like shadows, silent and precise. Amara waited for the sound of the door closing, then slipped out of bed. She padded barefoot to the window and watched them gather at the edge of the school compound, right where the forest began. One by one they disappeared into the trees. Amara didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning Lulu was back in bed. Her eyes were bright, and her voice rang with confidence. She offered Amara a pastry from her cupboard. "You should come next time," she whispered. "It's beautiful. You'll feel different, whole. Amara frowned. Where did you go? But Lulu just smiled and said, It's not about where. It's about who you become when you get there. Amara turned away. Something was very wrong with Iriti Girls Academy, and she intended to find out what. It began with the crows. A week after the night Lulu slipped into the forest, Iriti's courtyard began to fill with them. Jet black, sharp-beaked and silent. They perched along the rooftops of Dormitory C and the old assembly hall, watching with eyes too human to ignore. No one else seemed to notice them, not even the teachers. But Amara counted them. 23 on the first morning, then 30, then 40, always in odd numbers. I swear those birds are following me, Amara whispered one afternoon to Chioma in the library. Chioma barely glanced up from her notes. Don't say things like that out loud. Not here. Why? Chioma hesitated. Then, lowering her voice, said, Because at Iriti, the things you speak, start to listen. That night, Amara woke to find Lulu sitting upright in bed, her eyes wide open, her hands clenched into fists. A thin stream of blood trickled from her nose, but she didn't seem to notice. Amara jumped out of bed and shook her. Lulu, wake up. You're bleeding. Lulu slowly turned her head, her expression blank and terrifying. They said I should bring you next time, she whispered. Amara recoiled. What? Who? Lulu smiled and then, as if snapping back into herself, wiped her nose, giggled and said, Joking, babe. You're too tense. But Amara could tell it wasn't a joke. The next day, Lulu was a star student. She recited entire chapters in literature class without her textbook. She solved the hardest problems on the blackboard before the teacher even finished writing them. The other girls cheered her on. Amara watched her carefully. Her eyes were sharper now, her presence magnetic. She was no longer just Lulu Adebayo. She had become something more. By midterm, 3 more girls from Dormitory C had changed. They became eerily perfect, well-spoken, obedient in class, unnaturally graceful. They walked with a synchronized rhythm, like dancers in a ritual. Their hands were always clean, their books never wrinkled, and they always followed Madame Kazi. Amara began to hear more stories, whispers of a circle, a secret society that met under the moonlight to perform rites of elevation. Some girls said it had been around for decades, passed down through Madame Kazi's predecessors. Others believed Kazi brought it from the north, from ancient lands near the Sahel where women spoke with spirits and commanded fire. She tried asking questions discreetly, but the students clammed up or deflected with nervous laughter. Only one girl gave her something real. Don't let them mark you, said Ada, a reclusive JSS 3 girl who had failed 2 terms but refused to leave. They say it's a blessing, but once they carve the sigil, your blood doesn't belong to you anymore. What sigil? Ada lifted her sleeve and showed Amara a faint scar just below her elbow, an arc with 2 crossing lines inside it, like an eye that never blinks. I escaped before the 3rd rite. That's when they bind your soul to Iriti. That night, Amara checked Lulu's arm while she slept. The sigil was there. The invitation came the following Sunday. A single white envelope, slipped under Amara's pillow. Inside was a note written in curling red ink. You have been chosen. Tonight, Udugro Forest. Midnight. Wear white. Come alone. Speak to no one. Amara's hands trembled as she read it. She wanted to rip the paper up, burn it, throw it into the toilet. But something in her, curiosity, defiance, maybe pride, made her keep it. That evening, the school was unusually quiet. The crows were gone. The air felt thick like it had weight. Even the lights in the corridors flickered more than usual. When the generator cut out at exactly 11:45 p.m., Amara rose from bed, dressed in white, and slipped through the dormitory door. She followed the path the others had taken before, past the assembly hall, down the gravel slope behind the labs, and through the narrow trail at the edge of the forest. The deeper she went, the colder it became. The trees loomed like watchers, their limbs tangled like knotted hands. And then she saw it. Clearing. The girls were already gathered, all in white, standing in a perfect circle. Madame Kazi stood at the center, barefoot, her head wrapped in deep crimson. In one hand she held a clay bowl, in the other, a feather dipped in something dark. As Amara stepped into the clearing, the circle opened and welcomed her silently. No one spoke. Kazi raised the bowl. "Tonight," she said, her voice smooth and steady, "we draw back the veil. We welcome a new daughter into the womb of knowledge, into power, into sisterhood." The girls began to hum, low, deep, rhythmic. The sound didn't rise from their throats but from the earth beneath them. Amara stood frozen. Kazi approached, dipped the feather into the bowl, and raised it to Amara's forehead. Then something strange happened. The trees around them began to sway, though there was no wind. The moon turned blood red, and Amara heard a whisper in her ear, not in Yoruba, not in Igbo, not in any language she recognized. But she understood it. "You do not belong here." Amara stepped back, and the humming stopped. A sudden sharp breeze ripped through the clearing. Madame Kazi frowned. "You hesitate." I can't," Amara said. Her voice trembled, but she stood tall. "I'm not joining this." The girls stared in silence. Lulu looked at her with something between pity and hunger. "You will regret this," Kazi said, not in anger, but in certainty. Amara turned and ran. Behind her, the humming began again, this time louder, deeper, darker. Back in her dorm, heart racing, Amara stuffed the white wrapper under her mattress and stared at Lulu, now sleeping peacefully. But Amara knew peace was over. She had refused the circle, and now they would come for her. It began with the mirrors. On Monday morning, Amara entered the bathroom and found her reflection smiling at her. But she wasn't smiling. She froze, staring into the cracked, foggy glass above the sink. Her reflection lifted a hand she hadn't moved, then grinned, a slow, wolfish grin that curled far too wide for her face. Amara stumbled backward, heart thudding. The girl in the mirror remained still, lips frozen in that horrible smile, until a senior girl came in and turned on the tap beside her. In a blink, the reflection returned to normal, her own. But she knew what she saw. The girls who had once smiled at her in the dining hall now looked through her. Lulu no longer acknowledged her. In class, her seat was mysteriously reassigned to the back corner, next to the open window where the wind always seemed too cold. And then the small torments began.
If you enjoyed this story and want to catch more, remember to hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. Catch you in the next video.